Ja, ein spannender, kreativer, innovativer, impuls- und energiegeladener Tag 2 bei den österreichischen Tourismustagen 2021 neigt sich dem Ende zu. Und ich finde, Sie haben sich zum Abschluss nochmal Erholung verdient. Wie wäre es mit Erholung in der Natur? Das ist doch genau das, wonach wir uns gerade nach der Zeit von Corona sehnen, das, was wir dringend suchen. Wälder, Wiesen, Seen und Hügellandschaften. Österreich hat natürlich einige magische Plätze zu bieten, die der Seele so richtig gut tun. Und deshalb wollen wir Ihnen jetzt Gutes tun und wollen Ihnen eine ganz andere Sichtweise, nämlich auf den Winter in Österreich bieten. Mit einem ganz tollen Film, der heute hier im Rahmen dieses abschließenden Coffee Talks eine Premiere feiert. Die Suche nach dem Winterlicht heißt er. Wir werden diesen Film präsentieren. Wir haben die große Freude, die Protagonistin des Films kennenzulernen, Patricia Schumacher. Und ins Gespräch mit ihr eintauchen wird heute hier live in unserem Studio in der Messe Wien Michael Gigl, er ist der Region Manager USA bei der Österreich Werbung. Ja, und insofern freuen wir uns jetzt auf einen spannenden Coffee Talk. Erholung in der Natur steht im Mittelpunkt. Der Talk wird in englischer Sprache sein und deswegen sage ich jetzt, Michael, it's your turn.
Thank you very much. Well, Patricia, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I don't want to speak too much because I think we should probably begin fairly quickly with the movie. Just want to say a few words. Finding the Winterlight is the title of a film where we really try to offer a slightly different perspective on winter in Austria. And I think your role is truly essential because it is, in essence, your story. And I think one of the things that the film tries to show is just the positive aspects that nature in general, during all times of year, can have, the positive impact that nature, spending time in nature, has on our well-being, both our physical well-being and our mental well-being. So I don't want to speak too much early on, and I would say let's, by the way, the very first time we're showing this movie, Finding the Winterlight, the story of Patricia Schumacher and winter in Austria. Roll the clip, please.
Committing to do something beyond your comfort zone isn't always easy. But when that happened, it was as if I was learning an unspoken language, and it helped me to expand my horizons. An exciting, unexpected journey. That's my story. I'm Patricia Schumacher. I'm a musician and a chef, and now I live in Austria. I grew up in Southern California, and my parents were pastors and creatives, so at a really young age, I started singing and dancing and expressing myself. I was 7 years old when I wrote my first song. At the age of 17 at work, some woman heard me singing, and she asked me if I wanted to be a part of her record label. While I was touring in clubs in Los Angeles, I experienced the unhealthy side of the music industry. And with this in mind, I decided that the best thing for me to do is to go to culinary school. And I've been singing and cooking ever since. I've always wanted to live in Europe, but it was a dream that I just kind of put on the shelf. And then I met my husband, who is Austrian. He wanted to come back home, and when the opportunity came, I definitely decided, okay, I'm gonna do this. Where I grew up, the sun was out 24/7. We don't really have a winter, so having so much snow, having so much cold, that was some of the most difficult things for me. I've actually experienced the lack of light, I guess you can say, through my art and through my music. I think the most beautiful thing that I've experienced here, Austrian winters are so connected to nature. I was able to experience nature in such a different way, and that brought out so many ideas and feelings. What I'm working on now, I picked a piano that sounds like, you know, the sun's coming out, so all of the snow is melting, and so it's da-na-na-na-na-na-na. So I picked that, it kind of inspired that. I always had the sun. Here in Austria, I search for it, I wait for it. I am so excited, and it's such a blessing, and it's so beautiful when I can feel the sun on my face on a cold day. I realized it was the little things that made me happy. This helped me live more consciously, more in the now. I wanted to push myself beyond my comfort zone. I started taking cold showers at first, but it also had to do with just the willingness to go out of my comfort zone. That definitely changed my attitude, changed my emotional state, changed my whole perspective. When I'm ice bathing, I keep breathing. That's all I'm thinking about. Breath. It's almost like 100 needles are just picking at your body. But you're realizing just because you're in pain, it doesn't mean you have to suffer. Just because you're feeling pain doesn't mean you have to stop. Let those emotions evaporate and let it go as if the sun was evaporating snow. My relationship with Austria is unexpected. I've experienced a whole way of living here that I would have never experienced back home in America, and I think I'll be here for a while.
Patricia, you've seen the movie once before, I believe, or twice before, maybe?
Once, yeah.
Yeah, once. So seeing it again, what's your immediate reaction to seeing it again?
Well, I go back to the emotion and the being in the snow and all of the opportunities and the experiences I've been able to have here with nature. And when I saw the water, I was like, oh, that looks so refreshing. I know it sounds weird, but yeah.
It looked very refreshing. We'll talk about that a little more later. But when you talk about snow, I think that for us Austrians, that doesn't sound like any, unusual. I mean, we all grew up around snow. You grew up in a completely different environment in Southern California. Can you describe a little bit what it's like there when you grew up?
Absolutely. I grew up mid-August, in the hottest time of the year. This is around 100 degrees. I'm not sure what that is in Celsius. And this temperature stays, I would say, 70 to 80% of the year. So there are no changes of season. Of course, you can experience that if you go up to the mountains, but my family and I didn't do that very often. So it was summer and rain, a little bit of rainfall. And it's very desert. It's dry, the plants are a little different, the smell is different, it's more seawater, and yeah, there's just this desert, beautiful feeling, but hot all the time.
So when you talk about the 24 hours, I mean, not literally 24 hours of sunshine, but it feels like it's the sun is constantly. And we chatted earlier, I mean, I know exactly the area that he grew up, and it is very dry, and there's a sameness, I think, year-round.
Yeah, constant, absolutely.
So when you live in Austria, obviously, now as we learned.
Yeah.
So that's obviously quite different. But it's also, where you grew up, it's also scenic. I mean, the desert is also a very scenic place. So what was your relationship with nature at that time?
I, of course, always enjoyed nature. My parents, my mom particularly, is almost full-blooded Native American, so I think this is just genetic memory of me loving to be around nature. It was so hot, so of course we're barefoot and, as kids do, just playing in the dirt and having fun and climbing up trees. So I definitely had, when I was younger, a connection and a love for nature, rocks and plants. It was just very different. I didn't see a lot of greenery. It was more, the tones were different and the feel was just a little different.
So what's the color?
Browns, yeah, a lot of brown tones, everything you can imagine. There are small bits, of course, of green, but it's not as prominent.
So when we'll talk about how you came to Austria later, but so in Austria, so we talked about the green, that's something kind of a new experience for you almost. And when was the first time you actually experienced snow or snowfall like, you know, like we're so used to here?
The first time I experienced snowfall was in Chicago, and I was in my mid-20s where I really experienced snowfall. So before then, I saw it in the mountains, and maybe we went up and saw a little bit of it. I've never felt it on my face or touched it or really played around too much in snow that I remember.
It's for us Austrians almost, you know, something we never think about, I think. It's just for us, we grew up around it, so all the time. In the movie you talked that you came to Austria because you met your now husband. And, so how did you meet him? He's Austrian, I assume?
He is Austrian, yeah. I met him in Chicago.
Yeah.
I was a sushi teacher because I was working in a recreational cooking school. So I'm also a chef, so I was cooking and teaching people, and we met that way. We were friends, and now I'm here.
So when you both met in Chicago, did he sort of introduce you to the Austrian culture a little bit, or how did, you know, he did? Yeah. So you mentioned a sort of interest in living at some point in Europe and early in the film. So was it immediate? It was like, well, you know, now is my chance? Or how did that develop?
That was probably in the back of my mind, definitely. I did love just how he was and his different perspective, and he knew how to waltz and just stuff, you know, that you get taught in school here. Yeah. And of course, he was listening to all different kinds of music, and classical being one of them, and speaking the different language. All of this intrigued me very, very much. But I've always wanted to move to Europe, but with my lifestyle, living in urban cities and being both a musician and a chef, I couldn't really afford it, and it just didn't happen. I was just in the grind, I guess you can say, just focused. So when Marcus and I both decided it was time to leave Chicago, when he mentioned Austria, definitely it was something I was a little hesitant about, of course, because I wanted to go back to the warm weather in LA, but...
So was there like a conversation back to LA or moving to Europe, to Austria?
Yeah, there was definitely a conversation. And he's like, he wanted to come back here and I wanted to go back to LA. So we weren't on the same page at first.
Very often it's the other way around. Very often it's like both of them trying to find the new places. Or,
yeah,
you know, so you
yeah, we were both kind of had our vision of what we wanted next.
Well, I guess it worked out well.
It did. Compromise.
So, okay, so you come to Austria, I believe, what, about 3 years ago, you told me earlier?
3.5, yeah.
And so when you arrive here from, you know, completely different background in terms of lifestyle, in terms of, you know, even scenery and places and things like that. So what were your first impressions? I mean, is there something that sticks out when you look back now, or?
Yeah, I really loved how clean the cities were and how beautiful the trains. There were just little things that I was so used to that the first things I've noticed, of course, everything was in German, and that at first was a little hard for me to get used to. But the people were kind, and again, all of the colors were very, very different. So just seeing the private colors, excuse me, and experiencing that. The food was amazing. I really enjoyed the food, and yeah, it was an overall pleasant, but very, it was a culture shock at first.
The outdoors, if you want to call it that way for simplicity's sake.
Yeah.
The mountains, the green aspect, sort of, did you immediately sort of, I mean, you're growing up, you mentioned you were outside a lot, running around barefoot and stuff, so that part wasn't new, but was sort of, did your nature experience have to adapt? Did it change, or did you immediately feel yourself like this is really like space I just love to be in, you know, year-round in essence?
It was half and half. I mean, the way that Austrians do Sport here and how they love going on their hikes, I was not used to this. These kind of hikes, these kind of bike rides, this, you know, it's a very active country regarding going into nature and taking this time with your kids. And it's not like we didn't do that, but it was very, very different. It was a lot of straight walking, you know, nothing, no hills or anything. So this definitely was something that I always wanted in a sense, but there was no way I was going to kind of do that. I was a city girl.
So when you out in nature, in green, in forest space and stuff, so you really focus more on sort of the, let's call it chill time, the kind of like the more quiet time, and sort of not being driven by exercise or movement or strenuous sports or things like that. You find that to be more sort of beneficial for you personally.
Yeah, I personally, we do go for runs or go on hikes, but just sitting with nature and being able to experience the beautiful nature here in Austria and the clean water and the clean air, just there's so many things that have been preserved in the culture that I really love experiencing.
Yeah.
This for me has helped me so much on many different levels.
I think some of those aspects are not new anymore. Things like forest bathing, I mean, they've become sort of, you know, I wouldn't say trendy, but they've become more, people are more conscious of that, and walking and not just climbing and hiking. But I think not that often that you look at winter in that same way. And I think most of us Austrians, when you think of winter, we think of ski slopes and having fun on the slopes. Which is a beautiful part of our culture. This film, we wanted to show something a little bit different about winter, a different aspect of winter. And I think it was unbelievable luck that we found you. I don't even know how that happened, to find somebody that really just sort of looked at this with a completely different set of eyes. And I think, that scene when you sort of, glance into the sun, that spoke to me very much, because you really, you said you've been around sun all the time, and all of a sudden you're almost missing it. Yeah. If I interpreted this correctly. Yes. And because you're maybe not having it all the time, now all of a sudden the pleasure you receive is almost like heightened in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it just creates something within you that you're able to appreciate things. And I never thought I'd say like, oh, I miss the sun. I can't wait till I see it, because that was my life. I was constantly in the sun. And even if I traveled, I was still come home very often, or was very comforted by the sun. So anytime I was in cold, it was extremely discomforting for me. I did not like it. It would change my attitude, my emotional state. So it wasn't just like a cold day. Like me personally, it was a drama. It really was a drama. So to come to this state now and experience winter and enjoy it in its full beauty, and not just be uncomfortable or bothered by it, is great.
So for you personally, it did change over time. So in essence, when you first experienced winter and the cold, it was not something you wanted. You
No, it was very difficult. Experiencing winters, I think also in the city, because I experienced winters in Chicago, and that winter is a little brutal. So I never really got to enjoy it. It just meant a certain thing. And when I came here and was able to be in winter, it was really like a whole new thing. A whole new visuals, feeling. I was able to shift that like very strong mindset of what I thought winter was, and now it's something different and enjoyable.
I think for many of us, winter, unless we're out in the snow or unless in the mountains or the ski slopes and stuff, I think for many of us there's this aspect of winter where it's kind of quiet, it's cold, it's the weather sometimes a little dreary, and you've learned sort of to really appreciate some of those moments, those little surprises maybe that happen during that time. Are there any, for us city dwellers that are, maybe not seeing the sun often enough during the cold season, are there any sort of tips that you would give us? I mean, how do you find the joy in this part, which is, I think, really...
Yeah, that's a good question. I can only speak through my experience, and it really the weather was just the method. And the weather was just something to push me in a state where I really just had to be okay with the now and accept what was happening. And if I am torturing myself wanting to be warmer and I'm not, or wanting to be cooler and I'm not. This is something that, it brought up the question within myself of, okay, what's happening here? Are you doing this to yourself? Like what's really happening within yourself that's creating this sadness or this depression or this issue? And so that's the question I would just encourage people to ask themselves, more so of what could I change, and more of so of like, okay, what is this within me that I can learn and find out more about myself, and why, also how I can, that's how you deal with it as well. It might just be an attitude change or a shift, or it can be something logical where just put in another jacket. I would always underdress, so that was also an issue. I was used to California weather. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Well, so part of it is mindset.
Yeah.
Part of it is just being mindful, I guess, and there is obviously one part in the movie, and I think we should talk a little bit more in length about that, is that scene with the ice, swimming or ice bathing, if you want to call it. By the way, I really would like to make a mention about the Altenmark-Tauchensee region, where we filmed this this movie. Their help also in filming that scene particularly, I think, was phenomenal. And I think I want to say thank you to them there. But so this is obviously, we didn't ask you to step into ice-cold water for the very first time in your life. So this is something that came up during the preparation when we talked about the concept of the film, the ideas behind it. And so this is one thing we found out about you, that you actually do this on a, I don't know, daily basis, but you do this quite frequently.
I do, and like what you had mentioned before, it's 10 years in the making. There's even 3 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to get in the water. And for a whole year, I watched Marcus do it. And I didn't want to go in, I wasn't ready. Maybe my feet or something, but it was just too cold. There's so many thoughts that I had before that would never get me into that water. And that water was 0 Celsius.
So Marcus, your husband, actually does it. So he brought you to it?
He exposed me to it. And it was nothing that we both read about. It wasn't like a theology or a religion-based decision. It was just something, we were in nature already during these times, and we wanted to go for a swim. And so, okay, it's really cold, but let's try it. Let's just see what happens. And so that's how it started with him. And I just watched. I said, definitely not going in. And then 2 years ago, it wasn't even like a decision. It was like, oh, I'm going in now. And I just went in and watched what was happening while I was going in the water. My breath and my thoughts and...
So did you prepare long-term for this, like a journey, like a whole sort of training regimen to be ready for it, or?
No, I didn't. That's why I wouldn't. That's why I'm not like an advocate to say everyone should do it. This is my personal experience and what I did, and everyone should make that. And if they have to go feet in for a little while and see. It did start with a little bit of cold showers, of course, where I just kind of prepared that way, but you can't prepare yourself for something like this. It's such a beautiful experience. What it does and what it's done for me is you can't think when you're in this state. And I feel like sometimes we're slaves to our thoughts in a way. You can't think about what you did or didn't do. You can't think about how someone's upset with you. You can't be angry or have unforgiveness about the person who cut you off in the morning or any of this. You breathe. You're just like, okay, I'm good, I'm breathing. And this is such a beautiful state to be in, just a little break from everything, and that's why I use it, that's why I've done it.
You almost make it sound like that's almost like a little spiritual sort of experience in some way.
For me, absolutely. For me, I've been able to release a lot of trauma and even forgive myself and people, and it sounds weird or interesting, it's just I've used that method to really just release, because you can't do anything. It's cold and you're a little bit in pain, but then you realize I'm not suffering. Okay.
So how long were you in there?
I was in there, I was only probably in a couple minutes. It wasn't very long. And I'm not a swimmer yet. I can't really go for it. I like to just stay, and I'm working my way.
Well, this is what struck me when I saw the scene, because I mean I've tried once to do one of those polar bear swims, and you know where you run in and you scream and you run back out.
Yeah.
It was sort of a very different. And when I saw the film and I saw you know, the calmness, you know, the almost meditative aspect that, you know, that you described in there, and none of this, you know, this is actually how it happened. You know, the film shows really exactly how it happened. You walk very calmly in there. It's this sort of a stillness that you have, and you walk out. I mean, that to me was like, how is this even possible? I mean, the water was literally
Zero
you know,
sense. Yeah.
0 cents. Well, so that's, you know, to me that's, I don't know, scary in some way.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the point. That's why I do it. There are thoughts, I'm like, okay, am I gonna die? Am I gonna freak out? What am I gonna do? Am I gonna scream? And sometimes, yeah, I do feel like, sometimes I cry. And that's a release for me. And it's not even that it's pain, it's just this tension within my body. The cold water helps me do that. So it's been a beautiful method.
And it is something that's becoming more and more popular. So, you know, it's, I mean, it's something that people, I mean, I did a little bit of research. I think especially in the Salzburg region, there's quite a few people that do this almost on a regular basis now. And I did hear about, you know, like take your time, months long of just cold showers and things like that. And it is supposed to be very beneficial for your health, for your immune system.
Absolutely. For your skin, for hair, for my hair's actually doubled in length since in 1 year just from cold water. There's other stuff like this.
But you do know that hair grows naturally without
yeah.
without chopping it ice cold water.
Yeah, there's some of these benefits, but there's also definitely mental and emotional benefits and health benefits that come with being in cold water.
So if you know, so basically what I'm hearing is if you're sort of done and bored with yoga, this is your next step. Is that what you?
I don't know if I'm saying that, but I wouldn't say why not. Definitely, if you're up to pushing your comfort zone and you want to learn more about yourself and how you process certain things, this is definitely something to look into.
It's tempting, but well, you know, give me a year and we'll chat if I've, you know, tried anything close to it.
3 years ago, I was exactly,
It is.
When you're ready, you're ready
But it looked amazing in the film to watch you do that. So you're a musician. You talked briefly about about you living and working in Los Angeles, you know, one of the music capitals of the world. What was your music background when you grew up? I mean, you mentioned your family. I think your dad was a pastor in California. So what kind of music did you listen to when you grew up, or what influenced you as a musician?
Yeah, my dad was just, he never had any training, classical, or went to school. He was just a good old rock and roll, kind of figured out, ear training. And yeah, both of my parents, I grew up with gospel, a lot of gospel, but also my dad was a producer. And so when I grew up in his bedroom, he had all of his producing equipment, and I would fall asleep to him writing music, different genres, and this was the beginning of my exposure to music through my dad. At 2, he was already teaching me to sing, or not teaching me, leading me, or we were just having fun. And then it just grew from that, of just a passion and a love for that. And of course, listening to a whole bunch of different kinds of music, jazz and rock. And again, I had mentioned gospel and a little country. And yeah.
So then you moved to LA briefly, or for a few years, I believe, and you try to make it sort of in the industry, so to speak.
Yeah, I lived 45 minutes south of Los Angeles. So it was really easy for me to go back and forth. And where I grew up, that's what you do. It's the musical capital. If you want to be a musician or an artist, you start going there, and that's what I did. I just started doing shows and hanging out there.
But you didn't like all the parts of the industry. I think that
I think a lot of people don't, but it's their vision. And for me, it just wasn't my path. I just didn't feel connected to the industry there, and I did always wanted to do music in Europe, and I know it sounds weird. I had no idea what it was, but I just felt a pulling to kind of do more stuff over here, and that was in my early teens, and little past that I won't go into, but yeah, it definitely happened. that way.
So I think, you know, I don't want to forget to mention, all the music we hear in the little film, that is your music. That's part of what you do still on a daily basis.
Yes.
So not just the clips when you talk about that scene with the piano
all the
sounds
background
and
music.
the background. All the background music is yours.
I wrote and produced, yes.
Fantastic. So if anybody wants to hear your music, where did it go? Where can we see you? Where can we listen to you? Or hire you to give us a concert or whatever that may be?
Yeah, that would be amazing. I have a website, patriciastarlight.com. Patricia Starlight is my artist name.
Yeah.
And you can find me on all platforms, on Spotify, and then on the website you can also find me on SoundCloud. And on SoundCloud I have more of different genres and stuff that I create in my home and with the studio, and just decided to just put it on SoundCloud. So you can find me there. And I have of course, always working on stuff that are coming out. I'm on Instagram, so you follow me on Instagram, and hopefully I'll be doing shows soon and getting out there.
Well, I think that would be, I think we all hope that new musicians can do shows again very soon.
Yeah,
I think it's happening. So, well, we can't let you go. But when we talk about music, I have to ask you. I mean, you know, we talked about your, you know, arriving in Austria and you know, the nature experience, the climate, the changes, the musical experience. You didn't grow up around classical music, I believe, at all.
No, not really.
So Mozart, Beethoven, they weren't household names when you grew up?
No. It's more like Steely Dan and Sting and stuff like that.
So, and now has it become sort of part of your life? Well,
it is.
In Austria?
I really love operatic soprano music, and this is definitely not what I grew up singing and singing. I don't want to compare it at all, but seeing how someone can move and do what they do with their voice, like an athlete, is so fascinating and beautiful. And hearing certain music in these old churches and these old cathedrals and the history behind all of it, yeah, I've really enjoyed, and it's been a really great eye-opener. And of course, there's so much to learn, and this country has so much history regarding, of course, classical music. So I still have a lot to listen to and go to.
So that is definitely something that piqued your interest,
yes,
sort of
course, yeah.
over the years.
Yes.
And we're probably not going to get you to learn how to ski, or are you?
I don't know.
What's the verdict on that yet?
Of course I'll try. It just never came to it yet.
So you wouldn't rule that out either?
No, of course not.
Fantastic. You know, unfortunately, for quite a few months now, none of us have really been able to travel. You know, you've been in Austria now for about 3 years, you said. You had a chance to see parts of the country, I assume, or at least some parts. Yep. Are there parts of Austria that you really want to see, looking forward to, that you haven't had a chance to explore yet, or any places?
There's
what
a
comes
lot
to mind?
The wine country I still haven't been able to explore, which I'm looking forward to, and I haven't been really north or south. So I hear the south is beautiful with the mountains.
Sort of like Carinthia, the lake region.
Yeah, the lake region, of course. There's a lot of glaciers and a lot of nature that I still haven't seen that I want to see also during the winter. And
well, I hope you did mention in the film you're gonna stay for a little while.
I am. I love it here. I really, really do. Genuinely, I really enjoy it here. So I think I will be here for some time.
That would be wonderful. I hope so, and I hope we'll have an opportunity to meet again sometime very soon.
Thank you.
And once again, thank you so much for joining us, for coming extra to Vienna, and Patricia Schumacher. And I hope everybody likes the film. It's called Finding the Winter Light. Thank you so much, and thanks for joining us.
Ganz tolle Lebensgeschichte, ein toller Film, Suche nach dem Winterlicht heißt er, der nach diesem Gespräch mit der Protagonistin Patricia Schumacher aus meiner Sicht nochmal eine andere Wertigkeit, noch höheren Wert bekommen hat. Danke auch an den Michael Gigl, der das sehr charmant und auch interessant gestaltet hat. Wenn Sie sagen, jetzt habe ich Lust bekommen, mir diesen Film nochmal anzuschauen, dann haben Sie natürlich die Gelegenheit dazu, denn dieser Clip, auch dieser ganze Part, auch das Interview ist ebenso on demand abrufbar wie alle anderen Sessions dieser österreichischen Tourismustage 2021, also auch alles von gestern, von heute und alles, was Sie morgen noch erleben dürfen. Ja, und mit diesem inspirierenden Coffee Talk, meine Damen und Herren, beenden wir diesen Tag 2 der österreichischen Tourismustage 2021 mit ganz viel Wissen, das wir hoffentlich weitergeben können, mit vielen neuen kreativen Ideen und Konzepten und mit vielen Impulsen, die noch lange nachwirken mögen. Mehr davon gibt es natürlich morgen an diesem dritten und letzten Tag der österreichischen Tourismustage. Und das ist ein ganz besonderer Tag. Es ist nämlich der Tag der Öffnung, der mit Vorfreude erwartet wird. Wir werden morgen also nicht nur Impulsvorträge und Paneldiskussionen haben, sondern auch die Gelegenheit nützen und live zu den Hotspots hier in Wien in der Hotellerie und Gastronomie schalten und so ein bisschen die Stimmung auch hier in der Stadt einfangen, rund um diesen ersten Tag der Öffnung. Freuen Sie sich drauf. Ja, ich wünsche an dieser Stelle allen Branchenkolleginnen und Branchenkollegen, dem Tourismus in Österreich morgen einen erfolgreichen Neustart. Toi, 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 möge der erste Tag so ablaufen, wie Sie sich das wünschen. Ich würde mich natürlich freuen, wenn Sie morgen Zeit finden, mit dabei sind unsere internationalen Gäste zum Beispiel, die heute auch wieder großes Interesse gezeigt haben. Zum Abschluss laden wir Sie an diesem Tag 2 noch mal ein, mit uns die schönsten Plätze zu besuchen und diesmal einzutauchen in die schöne Tiroler Landschaft mit entspannenden und erholsamen Momenten, die Sie sich jetzt auch nach diesem anstrengenden Tag redlich verdient haben. Und damit sage ich an diesem Tag 2 danke, dass Sie mit dabei waren. Noch einen schönen Abend und bis morgen. Auf Wiedersehen.